Hello everyone, this is TJ Shembekar. I'm the COPA president, and today we are here in Melbourne, Florida at the Avidyne hangar. And with me today I've got a very special guest. Pete Sinclair is here with us. Some of you may know Pete from the forums. He's very active on the forums talking about all things Avidyne and Vantage. And today he's going to tell me a little bit about Vantage and the upgrade process, and then we're going to go actually fly the Vantage for real. So Pete, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your background. I know you've been in the Cirrus community for a long time. Tell me about the plane you have and how you got involved with Avidyne.
Well, I'm original owner of a 2003 G1 SR22 that has FADEC on it, probably the only one out there that was done by Continental. In 2010, I sold that because my son had issues with high altitude, flying above 8,000 feet, and ended up building a pressurized Lancer, which I flew for 15 years, and I retired last year and sold that and bought my Cirrus back from my buddy who bought it for me back in 2010.
That's kind of cool. You're the first and third owner of the same plane.
That's correct.
That's exciting.
And over the past year, I've been doing all sorts of enhancements and refurbishments to make it as close to a G7 as you can possibly get with a G1.
Excellent. Now, tell me, you've put the entire Vantage suite. What does that entail? What is the entire Vantage
That's
suite?
correct. So the plane that I sold to my friend had a DFC-90 because that came out, I believe, in 2009. So it had the DFC-90, but it still had the Garmin 430Ws in there and still had the original Integra displays. So none of that had been upgraded. I went through the process of figuring out what needed to be upgraded. And the first step was to replace the 430s with the IFD440s from Avidyne.
Okay.
And that was step one. The nice thing I've discovered about Vantage is you don't have to write a giant check up front. With Avidyne, you could do incremental upgrades to your plane, starting with the DFC-90, then you can do the IFDs, either two 440s, or as me, I started with two 440s and eventually upgraded one of the 440s to a 540. So now I have a 540 and a 440, and then do Vantage at the end of the process. So you don't have to write one big check up front. You can do it in an incremental way.
That's excellent. So in your case, it was the DFC-90, then the IFDs, then the Vantage screens.
Correct.
And I'm guessing that's probably the most common sequence that you see out there?
It is. And I was probably 6 months in between, which was good because it gave me a chance to learn how to use the IFDs.
Okay.
There's definitely a big difference in user interface between the 430s and the IFDs.
Okay. So Pete, your prior experience with avionics was mostly G1000, right?
It was. I flew the Integra for 3 years, but then I flew a G1000 Lancer that I built for 15 years.
For 15 years. So how did you find the transition going from G1000 to the Avidyne IFD models?
Well, with the Integras, it felt like a step backwards because in the G1000, I had synthetic vision, being able to do flight planning right on the G1000, very feature-rich user interface on the G1000. So the Integra, to me, felt like a step backward. Mm-hmm. The 430s were also a step backward. I mean, that's 25, 30-year-old technology now. Mm-hmm. So transitioning back into this series was a challenge from that standpoint. But at that point, I knew the Vantage was coming eventually. So I had in mind that I was going to upgrade the plane with new avionics within a reasonable time frame.
Okay. And as far as the Vantage, we talked about the components of the Vantage being the DFC-90, the IFDs, and the actual Vantage screens. The Vantage screens are actually touch screen, I believe, right?
That's correct. They're both touch and knobs and buttons.
Okay.
So every function you have, you can do both ways. I wouldn't want to fly a system that's all touch, because if you're in turbulence, it's really hard to keep your fingers straight when you're trying to touch that display.
Okay.
Plus, you get a lot of fingerprints on there eventually, too. Mm-hmm. But having the ability to do touch and knobs sort of gives you the flexibility of both worlds.
Okay. And I think the interface on the PFD, I've seen a couple of the promotional videos. You can actually do things like drag the bug around for the heading or the altitude or the VSI.
That's correct. That's correct. You can do it all by touch.
Okay, so we're going to definitely need to try that. I'm curious to see how that works in the plane.
Yeah, some of it, like most technology, is more. There's a better demo than in real life.
Okay.
Because in real life, when you're flying the plane, it's often sometimes faster to twist a knob.
Okay.
But it's nice to know you have the option to do it both ways.
Okay. Are there any things that you're seeing are common stumbling points for people transitioning to the Vantage?
They're pretty minor things. If you already have IFDs and you're familiar with your IFDs, I would say the transition is about 10 minutes because effectively the Vantages are basically big IFDs. especially the MFD. The PFD is a little bit different, but the PFD is pretty straightforward. It doesn't have a lot of options and configurations. The IFDs and the Vantage MFD, very similar user interface. So once you've known the IFDs, moving to the Vantage MFD is pretty straightforward. If you're doing an upgrade where you're doing the IFDs and the Vantage at the same time, it's probably, I would say, a 1 to 2 week transition, not all the time, but flying 2 or 3 times a week for 1 to 2 weeks, just to get familiar with how the IFDs work, and by reference, how the MFD works.
Okay. Makes sense, makes sense. Well, hey, why don't we go try it for real in the plane?
Let's do it.
All right. Now, I got to warn you, I haven't flown Avidyne stuff in a long time, and I'm pretty savvy with Garmin stuff, so it's going to be curious to see how I handle this this new flight deck.
I'd love to see which things you get hung up on or which things you like.
All right, let's go. All right, so this is the demo plane. This is a SR22 G2, and this has been fully outfitted with the complete Vantage suite. And this plane started out life as a traditional Cirrus that had a S-Tech 55, 2 Garmin 430s, and the Avidyne Integra screens. As you can see, it's been fully upgraded, starting with the DFC 90 down here. You have an IFD440 here, and then this larger screen. This is the IFD540, I believe?
540.
540, okay. And then these are the 2 big Vantage screens. These screens, this is the main MFD screen with its rocker panel interface, just like it does on the IFDs. This is the PFD, a traditional looking PFD with synthetic vision, and it also has a whole bunch of touch capabilities. So for example, if I want to put in a heading bug, I can click the heading select and I can type in a heading and put it in that way, or I can grab the bug itself and just drag it around myself. As Pete mentioned before, everything that you can do with touch, you can either doing it by dragging, by typing, or by moving the knob itself. So 3 different ways to accomplish the same thing. On the altitude, same thing. I can put in the altitude bug here directly, and then I can use the bug and drag the vertical feet per minute VSI here up or down. So that's pretty cool. Indicated airspeed, we can do indicated airspeed climbs by keying in there. And then what would we do on the autopilot here for indicated airspeed climb? We use this indicated airspeed bug there, or button here.
And you hold them at the same time. You go IAS Alt, which would then climb, you press indicator
IAS Alt.
It'll climb you at 100 knots in this case, up to the altitude you preset on the PFD.
Okay, got it. All right, pretty straightforward. And looks good. So let's say now I want to enter a flight plan, and the flight plan I want to enter is to go from Melbourne to Jacksonville. So the flight plan is from KMLB to KJax, and then the routing that I want is I want to go to a GPS fix called Mallet, and then Tango Airway 208, and then to Jacksonville. So how would I do that?
Let's go ahead and set it up. So the first thing you would do, if you want to do it on the MFD, there's 3 places you can enter the flight plan. Okay. On the IFD440, on the 540, and on the MFD. Okay. Entering or changing them in any of the 3 will change them on all 3. Okay. So they're all synchronized.
All right, so now we've got the whole flight plan entered, and I'm in the map page, and I can zoom out and I can see my entire route there going from Melbourne to Jacksonville. Now this is showing track up right now, because the plane happens to be pointing southbound, which is good. That's the way I normally fly. And then now if I want to go back to the flight plan, I'll go over to here.
And by the way, those tabs, you can also just touch them.
Okay, so if I was here on map, I can just touch that flight plan.
Right,
okay. And now here I can see my airway with all the different fixes in the airway. That looks like a full expanded view. And if I do
cursor view,
let's see.
This is compact view, where everything's, the airway now collapses.
Ah, I see. Now the whole airway has been collapsed.
And you can delete the entire airway here.
Okay.
If you switch
to expanded
mode, you can delete single waypoints, for example, in that airway.
Okay.
And if you go down to the next one, you press on top, your cursor, and you move your cursor around, And you can do it by touch. You can touch the display.
Okay, so as I move the cursor here, the map is moving to correspond to what I'm moving.
And if you zoom with the knob over there, as you zoom in, you can see more dramatically as you pick each waypoint, how it will basically allow you to basically walk through your entire route.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
One waypoint at a time.
That's neat. Okay. And the airspaces are all depicted very intuitively, just like a sectional colors and everything.
Right, so if you go back to the map button, you press the tab, and you zoom in.
Is this the zoom? Oh, this is the zoom.
It's on this side. Yeah. Keep zooming. So now if you want to touch some of the, so let's go ahead and touch your airspace there. There you go.
Yeah, okay.
It tells you the...
So this tells me all the dimensions, surface to 1900 feet and all that. Okay.
And the same if you went to your Class B space around Orlando, if we zoom down a little bit.
Okay.
Or you drag the screen around. Go ahead and drag it. You can drag the screen out. And you can see each of the different areas.
And I can say, put the cursor here, and that tells me this is surface to 10,000.
Correct.
This is going to be
rather than
something
having
higher.
to clutter the display with all that information all the time, it's user selectable using your finger.
Okay. Interesting. And now we also have all of our critical engine instrumentation up here, so that's good. And so this strip is persistent even as I move around different things?
Everything on here is 100% configurable.
Okay.
So if I were to go, for example, to the system button and then go setup, and then I go data blocks, and you notice when I move my cursor, these are all the blocks that are completely user definable.
Okay.
You can pick anything you want for each of these blocks.
Oh, that's incredible.
And including the ones down here. So anything you want to have, and instead of active GPS approach, I could change that to desired track, for example.
Interesting. That's pretty impressive. You can change literally every block.
Everything is completely configurable. Okay. So if you want it less cluttered, you can eliminate a lot of the blocks in there by doing that.
Okay.
And then on the configuration settings, you not only have that, you've got complete settings for the display, the flight management system.
So let's go to the PFD. And right now the PFD has an HSI configuration like this. Let's see what other HSI representations they have.
Well, if you press that, you'll see the different HSI down here. Press the button for View 360.
Okay.
And then it does ARC mode. Right?
So you can get either ARC or 360 depending on whatever you prefer.
Yep.
Okay. Excellent. And then your V speeds are turned on, so you can have your V speeds on your tape, I assume?
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. This is great.
And you have your map settings. If you open the map, you'll see all the different options. You can pick which airspaces you want to display.
Whether you want the special use airspaces on or not.
IFR charts, if you scroll down. So you're very configurable on the MFD. You can pick all the different things you may want to show.
Okay. Now, how do I see the chart? Let's say I want to see our flight plan.
So go back to map.
In our flight plan, we're going to Jacksonville. So how do I see the charts for that?
Chart.
Okay, so there's the airport layout.
That's the airport right now. So if you go select chart in the lower left corner,
okay,
and then you can paste KJAC, and now you have all the information for Jacksonville.
So I can first see the airport information. I can see the airport layout, select chart, and then I can pick any approach I want.
Right.
Okay. And this is the plan view, the header view, the profile view. You can see it in pieces.
And you can zoom in with your fingers as well.
Okay.
And scroll around it as well.
Okay. That's nice.
The beauty of the touch display is for doing this, it's a lot easier than a cursor, which is what Garmin uses.
Okay. Interesting. Well, I could see a lot of...
and that's your PFD redundancy mode. But if you press the map tab, now you have in redundancy a full PFD and a full map as your backup in case your PFD were to fail.
So if the entire PFD had failed, this would probably be the right
go-to
way.
display.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And you can also do chart, for example, and you can actually get your approach on there, and they're geo-referenced. So your airplane symbol is going to appear on the chart as you're coming into it.
Nice. All right, well, this is a great overview. I think we're good on the ground. Let's go ahead and pull the plane out and let's go flying.
Sounds good.
So the plane is kind of just doing its initial boot up sequence here. The engine page is similar to what you would see in a traditional Cirrus, but there's a couple of other things here. The environmental section here, it even tells you the ISA calculation on temperature, which is kind of neat. And here we've got the fuel totalizer showing. And here it's showing you density altitude. Right now is 1700, so that's 1700 above actual elevation. So that is a good number to know when you're doing takeoff calculations. So oil temp, generally we don't taxi until we get to 100 degrees. So we're just waiting for things to warm up here. In the meantime, let's get
So on the EGT and CHTs, it shows both minimum and maximum values. And above each cylinder shows the actual values with an underscore and overscore with the highest and lowest. You can also see the little trend markers show when the EGTs or CHTs are moving up or down.
All right, so let's get some frequencies here. So how would I find the frequencies for Melbourne? Like I want to know what the ATIS frequency is.
There's
the best way for me to
two
find
ways. So one is if you've got a 540, you press the frequency button. It brings up the frequency for the latest airport. And you can swap it. So swap it is the button over on the far left. Far left, the button. There you go. You swapped it. Okay, now, if you just to show you how you would get the frequency on an IFD540.
I know.
You twist the small knob here backwards one click, and the list comes up. On a 540, you have a button to do that. On a 440, you just twist the knob backwards a click, and you get the same thing.
Got it. Okay.
By the way, the other way to do the altitude, so you know, is press the lower left button. You see where it says knob control altitude heading? Now this knob will change it. So you can do it with knobs or with touchscreen.
Okay. So the way I did it, I just intuitively thought if I just touch that, I can go type it in.
Yep. But
that
you can
way is
also
one work. Or I can control through the knob by having this. There you go.
Now it's course and barrow. It goes between course and barrow.
Or altitude and heading.
Altitude, we're correct.
Okay, got it. Now let's put in our flight plan.
Mike.
So we're going to go to map, go to the flight plan page, and we're going to be going to waypoint called Mallet.
I'm not 205 Mike.
So watch the display. It auto-fills at a certain point. You just press enter.
I want to put in an airway and go 208. And I can see it's showing on the map at the same time. Out at Spiral. Enter. And then we're going to insert our destination waypoint. Jacks. Now my whole flight plan is in.
Right. And then on the 540, you notice the 440, there's an activate flight plan button. Nope. On this, there you go. And now your flight plan's activated. And the first leg is automatically brought up.
Okay.
If you go back to your map page.
And now I can.
That's the center. If you push it, you can swap between center. Push that button you're doing. Center, flip up, and forward.
Okay. All right, forward makes sense to me.
Okay.
All right, let's call ground. Melbourne ground, Cirrus 152 Sierra Bravo at the northwest apron with Yankee. Request taxi to 9er left.
152 Sierra Bravo, you can taxi runway 9er left via Kilo. What's your intention?
Taxi to 9er left via Kilo, and we want to do a VFR westbound departure. Now the checklists, are they all integrated in here?
They are. So if you go to system page, nope, system the button, checklist, the first tab. There you go. Now you can press each one and they'll expand.
All right, so far we've entered the flight plan, and we have also up all of our frequencies, and we've been able to taxi with no problem. And so far, I fumbled a little bit around finding things, but it was all relatively simple to figure out.
That view you're on right now is a static vision look-down view, as opposed to like the PFD, which is look forward, and the map, which is look straight down. Sort of a look-forward view with synthetic vision. So think of that as a map, the synthetic vision.
This plane is a G2, so I'm guessing it's somewhere around 2006, 7-ish.
I believe so.
And so with all of this new avionics, it just feels the new and fresh now that this full refurb. All All right, so now I want to get to the checklist. So I go to the system page, checklist, before takeoff checklist, for off, that one. Takeoff checklist, okay. Verify PFD page, PFD. So I hit enter on these.
Just tap it. It'll check.
Okay, got it. And verify engine data. Attached, it's Florida, so we're touching now. Handle the pin. That there.
As you can see, doing checklists using the touchscreen interface on the MFD was really quite simple.
Checklist complete.
So when you get a message like that, you can erase it by touching any of the displays.
Say I want a page for takeoff. Out 4 miles. That way I can see all the traffic in the area.
The nice thing about the traffic is it shows the identifiers. When they're making calls, you can identify who they are.
That's really nice. What I see most people doing on the Garmin is have ForeFlight or something on their on the iPad, so they get the identifiers.
And this way you get it on the main displays. And the same traffic appears on the 540 here. If we can zoom in here, let's go to map 540, and you can zoom in here. The same thing. So I often set this up as a traffic display, and that way I can set that zoomed out a little further. And that way I have sort of my close-in traffic here and my map where I'm going up here. If you have a 440, you can do the same thing. It's just a little smaller, but you also see the traffic. Then you can change it to forward up. You can change it to center, which is what I like for traffic.
All right, so let's set our heading bug to 270. Now, as I move this knob, I notice it moves 10 degrees at a time. If I want to move 1 degree, I have to press it in to get the more fine control.
Press and hold it while you're twisting.
Press and twist at the same time. Got it.
That gives you 1 degree at a time.
All right, now, the altitude bug, let's bug.
Correct, hold short 9 right for the IFR release.
So this is the altitude.
It's 500 at a time. And then if you press and hold it, it goes 100 at a time.
I'm sure that's one of those things you just get used to. It's obvious after you feel it once or twice, but
that took me a couple flights to get used to, because I get a heading and I twist it and all of a sudden it goes in the other direction. And so it takes about a flight or two to get your muscle memory changed on that.
Number 152 Sierra Bravo. Follow that traffic ahead south along the river until leaving Class Delta airspace. Runway 9 left for the takeoff.
Well, and this is a good example. I need the heading bug pointing southbound, so I'm just going to drag it over here, put it around there.
That stripe is a WX overlay. It tells you it doesn't have on-US weather or regional weather right here, right now.
Okay.
You can turn that off, and that goes away.
Makes sense? All right, so now let me pull up my flight plan. Let's say we want to go direct enter to Mallet. I'm going to go there.
We're already going there.
I want to redraw my line.
Right.
There it is.
Enter.
Okay. And
press enter. Enter. Twice, 2 enters. You could touch that as well.
Okay.
And there we go. Now it's turning us back.
And actually, I got to put it in nav mode.
If you want to see his airspace, you should be able to touch on there and see what the altitude is in his airspace.
Airspace there.
There you go.
There's Class B, 1900. And now altitude capture, it should level off at 3,000. All right, so like the crosshairs on perspective, you've got like a magenta box track that you're following there.
It's like a highway in the sky.
Highway in the sky, there you go. So now we're here in our flight plan, and let me get a quiet frequency so we don't have to hear him.
Press and hold the button, and it'll go and enter the emergency frequency.
628, runway 5, clear to land.
Press and hold. Should be doing it.
I'm pressing and holding.
Flight 62.
There you go. Yep. Hold, press and hold. See why I didn't do it. There you go.
Okay.
The same on the bottom.
All right, so we got Comp2s off. So, all right, so here's our flight plan now, and the flight plan shows a airway, but it's in a compact view, so I can't see what's in the airway. Right? I can change that to expanded. Now I see what's in the airway. Let's say I wanted to, you can delete one of the waypoints on the airway by highlighting that, hitting delete waypoint, or in the compact view, I can just delete the whole airway and it'll delete all the waypoints in the airway. Okay, that makes sense. And now, let's say I want to go change of plans, turn left heading 270. So left heading 270. There's 270. Heading mode. It should start turning. There it goes. And zoom into here. So now change of plans. We forgot something back at Melbourne. So now I want to reset up Melbourne, get rid of this flight plan altogether. So I can just put it here and just put in a waypoint. And I can say insert AMLB, enter, and
Unfortunately, the camera with the audio overheated at this point in the flight. But what you're seeing here is the process of briefing the charts for both the airport and the approach procedure, and then followed by loading the actual approach.
with pretty much very little training or instruction, he's kind of talked me through, and we've kind of figured out how to load approaches, change change fixes, all on the fly. Okay, so we are climbing now up to 2,500, and our approach got all messed up because of traffic. But this is a good example. I need to reload everything. Now I'm going to do procedure here.
We do that.
9 left. Edge no. Enter. Place active approach. Enter. There you go. Active approach is loaded. And I am now direct to there. Because it's in the jungle. And there we go. And then I want to get rid of the course reversal, so we delete the hold. There we go. And now I'll go back into nav mode. And
the Class 3 right turn south along the river, runway 5, clear for takeoff.
And let's actually change the altitude bug to 2,000 and change this to go down 500 feet a minute to get to 2,000.
All right, good flight. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity here, and looking forward to flying with you again.
Excellent, thank you.
So my first impressions of the Vantage suite were quite positive for a few tangible reasons. First, there is a lot of innovation in this platform, such as the wildly configurable MFD that you saw, the touchscreen PFD that allows you to do every function either by touch or by knobs. And if you choose to do it by touch, you can even do it with a on-screen keyboard or with just dragging around different bugs in there. The second thing that stood out to me was the fact that this is a modular update. This makes this a great upgrade path for a lot of legacy generation Cirrus. The third and final thing that stood out to me is how Avidyne is really listening to their customer feedback and improving the software. I've even heard through the grapevine that they have a couple of really significant announcements that they're going to make at Oshkosh, so I can't wait to see what they come up with.